Good morning and welcome to the Corporate Audit and Governance Committee meeting. My name is Councillor John Taylor and I'm Chair of this committee. I'll start by asking our members to just introduce themselves.
Andy North, Co-op team member.
I'm Nick Booth, a Co-op team member.
I'm James Homewood, a councillor in Ashbrow Ward.
Caroline Holt, councillor for Liversedge and Gomersall.
Harry McCarthy, councillor for Conn Valley Ward.
Thanks, committee. I'd ask officers that when they come in to speak, if they can just introduce themselves as well, please. Thank you. I'm going to just check, have we had any apologies?
Apologies received from Councillor Sewell.
Thank you. Just one announcement I just want to make at this point. So we have had a new member appointed to this committee. So Councillor Adam Zaman has taken the place from the Community Alliance. He's unfortunately not with us today, but at least we have a full committee membership now. So I'm going to move on to agenda item 2, it's minutes of the previous meeting. So the minutes have been circulated of our meeting on the 1st of August. Are members content that that's an accurate representation? I'm seeing nodding heads, so I'll take that as read. So item 3, declarations of interest. It's just to say that members, if you have any interest to declare, please declare them now. Or alternatively, as we go through the agenda, if you come across something, please also mention that. There is a form, an online form, which you need to complete and hand to Nicola if necessary. Okay, right. And move on to agenda item 4, admission of the public. This is a public meeting. And members of the public are able to attend and contribute. Agenda item 5, deputations, petitions.
None received, Chair.
Public question time.
None received, Chair.
Okay, so straight on to agenda item 7, representation on outside bodies, and I'll ask Helen to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Helen Kilroy, Assistant Democracy Manager in the Governance team. Just here this morning to very briefly just give an update. The report on the agenda gives an update on the representation on outside bodies, and it asks Corporate Governance and Audit Committee to note the latest changes following the AGM in May. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This is for us to note, but it's also for members if they have any questions they'd like to ask. Andy?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just a general question, really. So some outside bodies have a lot of representation, like 8 members, and some have 0. So from a governance perspective, I just wondered if there's potentially any challenge back to the council where bodies have no representation.
Okay, Chair, I'll attempt to respond to that. Are you meaning where some of the outside bodies haven't got any members listed?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so in the table at the back, it shows how many members there are for each of the bodies, doesn't it? And some of them have none, and some of them have, up to 8. I saw, I think. So it's just really, for my understanding, because I'm new to the council.
As we can see from the appendix, there are a lot of different categories. Some are prescribed outside bodies, which means that the authorities themselves tell us how many places we have and which parties need to fill those places. And some of the outside bodies have got vacancies. Where there are vacancies or no nominations, that is because the relevant party who the place belongs to has not been able to make a nomination. I think, does that answer your question? But there are different categories and restrictions for each of the outside bodies, depending on whether it's a, sorry, somebody wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll just pick that up, Helen. I think what Helen's saying is, with some of these outside bodies, it's discretionary whether we appoint somebody or not. We do attempt to appoint people to all of the bodies, but if the parties don't nominate somebody, there may be some that remain vacant, but it's discretionary, so we're not required to appoint somebody. If we were required to have a representative, either due to the constitution of that organisation or it's a statutory duty that we have somebody sat on that body, we would ensure that there is somebody appointed. And in the past, on odd occasions, we've appointed an officer if we've been unable to find a member to sit. Yeah?
Thank you. Yeah, that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That was a better response than I gave, but yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, officers, as well, for preparing the report. One of the things that we've discussed is, so I'm a councillor for Conn Valley Ward, but the Global Innovation Centre Limited, I think we're really supportive of the regeneration of Globe Mill as ward councillors, but one of the things that has come up previously is kind of community involvement and that link between the community and the Globe. And one of the things that we've requested as ward councillors would be whether, as this is an outside body, whether one of the Conn Valley ward councillors could sit on as that outside body. I know it's down here as an officer position. We've also kind of talked about having it being a ward councillor with support from officers from a kind of a technical perspective. I don't think I need a response now, but it was just kind of like a comment to note that and put it on record.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, could I get an email directly, and I'll follow up that separately outside of the meeting, if that's okay?
Yeah, I think yeah, if you just want to email across, Harry, and we'll see if we can sort that for you. Thank you. Any more questions on this agenda item, or are we happy to note the report? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 8, and I think Sarah's going to introduce this on bad debts.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah Brown, Head of Welfare and Exchequer. Today I'm here with the paper that's the annual consolidated report of all the debts written off in the financial year 24-25. Here for information today and, of course, any questions or comments. I'll briefly sum up the key points and then open for the questions. So we know Kirklees has a good record of collecting income due and a range of supportive measures to help bill payers who may be struggling as part of a broader suite of income collection and recovery measures to ensure that everybody that can pay does pay. Bad debt provision is built into our budgets so that because we know that despite best efforts, not all debts are able to be collected. And provision for bad debt will and does vary across services, and the accountancy teams and services responsible for income collection do regularly assess provision to ensure that the council isn't exposed to any significant write-off pressure in any one year. 24-25 income collection was not without its challenges due to the continuing national financial problems that residents continue to be impacted by, and debt has proportionally risen, the debt write-off, has proportionally risen in that financial year compared to the previous year, but of course that does compare proportionally to the debit raised. The paper itself focuses on the 5 main write-off areas, no surprises there: council tax, business rates, adult social care, finance and homes and neighbourhoods. All these service areas focus on direct debit as being a key collection technique, and ensuring that we get good early payment behaviour from our residents, which helps prevent debt accruing. All areas follow debt recovery processes that are tailored to that area's legislative requirements. So the debt recovery process for council tax will be quite significantly different to that of adult social care. Moving on to adult social care, the debt written off in 24-25 was low. When we compare it to the debit, there is a very small specialised team working within client financial affairs who are responsible for the debt recovery of that area. Last year, the team was very much focused on collection of debts and are turning their attention this year to write-offs, regularly reporting back to our adults team, and working very closely with that team to help prevent debt accruing in the first place. Overall, the write-offs for finance relate mainly to housing benefit overpayment recovery. The write-off percentage figure is relatively high because those households are the least able to pay, and that was reflected year on year when we bring this report. The write-off figure has increased this year and will increase next year as the debt becomes more difficult to collect in the future as Housing Benefit Administration is transferred to the Department of Works and Pensions with the Universal Credit rollout. Of course, within houses, Homes and Neighbourhood Service, not paying your rent can ultimately, regrettably, lead to eviction. Our income management team in that area, for them, that is the absolute last resort, and they are actively visiting tenants and seeking arrangements to pay all the time. Any write-offs, of course, in that area are due to that debt simply no longer being viable to pursue. In council tax and business rates, we strive to ensure really equitable recovery where payment is not received. We necessarily do have to write off monies, and these are significant annually because of the sums of monies involved across the entire piece. We have 2 collection targets, both the in-year target and the fullness of time target to work towards. And the summary that's provided in 2.9 shows shows where we're at as of the 31st of March 2025, and how the collection has increased for previous years. So you'll see that the collection for 23-24 in 24-25 we collected a further 0.4%. So you can see that we are gradually accruing that payment in fullness of time. It is increasingly difficult as we see more of our residents transferring to 12 monthly payments to get to where we would like to be with collection in year, but the collection in fullness of time is still standing up. 24-25 was an unusual year for council tax. We revised our council tax support scheme, and the change did result in increased customer contact and challenges around payment. We expected to see an impact in year collection, which we did, and we expect that will continue as a trend. We regularly benchmark against all of the local authorities, locally and nationally, for both council tax and business rates, as all our other income collection services, of course, do as well. I think it's important to note that as public servants, all services are conscious of maximising residents' income, and good quality debt advice is a key preventative measure for us, and all our areas regularly review support available. Importantly as well, we might have written some debt off, but we always will endeavour to write debt back on again if we find some new information about a debtor. We've got several ongoing projects across different service areas that mean we are continually reviewing our practice and policy, and really making sure that we are providing the best possible service. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And just before I bring members in, just to express my thanks to the wider team for the work that they do to try and minimise the amount of money that we lose, because obviously any income we lose is money that we could potentially use to provide services. But I'll open it now to members who wish to speak. Yeah, Nick, if you want to go first.
Hi, morning. Thanks very much for the thorough report, and it's made very interesting reading. And there's a couple of points I'd just like to, if you could clarify for my understanding, please. And the first one is the housing benefit overpayment, which I've read the paragraph you've written several times to try and understand it. Am I right in thinking that this is almost like free money? It's DWP make the overpayments, and if we can claim any of it back, we keep it.
That absolutely is the case.
I read it several times. I thought that can't be the case. So we rely on the DWP getting the numbers wrong to be able to generate this money. I mean, it looks from this, we got almost £5 million that we managed to reclaim that because of their errors. So what happens if they stop making the errors, the impact on our budget of losing £5 million quite dramatic?
Well, housing benefit is a dying area for us anyway. We will, any additional monies that we get from those overpayments is kind of Billy bonus money for us. But we are seeing a gradual decline in that because of the universal credit rollout and the ceasing of housing benefits anyway. So we will, it is, drying up.
Okay, so that's known about and that's budgeted for and that's all expected.
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Shall I carry on? I've got another 2 questions, I think. One's looking at the resources that you've got to manage this process, which is obviously increasingly time and cost intensive the further down the chain you get and trying to recover more money. It's like a diminishing return to effort and resource put into this activity. I guess in theory you should be spending as much as you can up to the point where the cost of recovering is outweighed, outweighs the amount you're recovering. Where are you in that sort of continuum? Are you thinking actually with more resource we could be getting more money, to pay for the resource and generate more surplus, or are we at the right point? Whereabouts are we?
Thanks. Morning, Kevin Mulvaney, Service Director, Finance. So, yeah, good point you raise. What we are looking at is how we benchmark with our stat comparators and West Yorkshire neighbours in terms of the resource that goes into council tax and business rate collection. We just started that piece of work. I've got a discussion on Monday with colleagues across West Yorkshire on that. So I can't give you a precise answer of where we are on that continuum, but I can assure you it's something we do look at. And I can say that throughout this year, where posts do become vacant in those areas, and there is churn in these areas, we don't hold those posts back. We do try and release them straight away because we know the importance of, is it 285 million of council tax that's at stake. So it would be a false economy to hold those posts back. If that answers your question.
If I may, sorry, I'll carry on. I've not got many more, but looking at the business rates element of the council tax write-off, where do successful appeals against business rate valuations get recognised? Are they counted as a write-off? So if if you've included in the debit for the year of £100,000 to someone and they appeal and it drops down to 75,000, where's the 25,000 write-off go? Does that go as a debt write-off, or where's that demonstrated? I'm just trying to understand if that is a true write-off or is it a correction of assessments as well?
Yeah, it wouldn't be classed as a write-off. We have a provision in business rates for appeals, so it would be an adjustment to the provision.
Thanks for that. I just wanted to understand if it was true write-offs. And then my final question is looking at the write-off summary comparison spreadsheet, the landscape spreadsheet that's towards the back. There's a section that allocates the write-offs to directorates, and in the place directorate, looking at development and highways, I guess development, together £250,000 write-off. The development write-off, is that like, write-offs of commitments from developers to pay their section 10, whatever it is, 106 payments and things? What is that? I'm just trying to understand what that would be.
We'll have to come back to the group on that particular one, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. If somehow you could let me know, because I was just thinking if it is section 106 things, I'm thinking why don't we get that money up front rather than leave it as something that's owing later that's at risk. So yeah,
I don't want to speculate on what it is or isn't, so it may be, but we'll come back to as a response to the committee.
Just in terms of section 106, when a section 106 agreement is signed between the developer and the council, that will specify the points at which those payments need to be made. Invariably, there are 2 or 3 payments that are due to be made, and they're triggered by the number of houses that have been occupied. So you might have a scheme where after 50% of the houses are occupied, half the money's paid over, the other afterwards. One of the challenges that we do have as a council is how do we know when to go and ask for that money? And I've seen circumstances over the years where we've ended up not collecting the money. Perhaps the developer's gone under or something, but if we'd collected it, asked for it on time, we might have got it. So there is a challenge about how do you know that the 50th house has been occupied. You're almost reliant on the developer telling you. It's not necessarily in the developer's interest to tell you, so there is a bit of there is a bit of a challenge there from a collections point of view, but not specifically in Kevin or Sarah's area. Okay, do anyone else want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just a question on the fullness of time targets, and first read of that looks as though it's in a deteriorating position as we go through time. But I think you said you were quite comfortable with that. I just wanted to hear a bit more about it, really, to get a bit more confidence. If you look at the council tax in 2018, collection was 98.29%. It's 94.1%. So I think it's my understanding rather than there's a problem. I just wanted to understand a bit more about the table, really.
No, overall, it's an increasing figure that we see. We have got an anomaly in 2018, and that could be a variety of things, where we've seen it increase. No, we have seen it increase, sorry. No, overall, we see that increase in collection as years go on. So
Yeah. I think it is my understanding, because what I think you're saying in the table is that you've collected 98.29% of council tax in 2018 by the end of March 2025.
Yes.
Yeah, and you've collected 94.1% in 2024 of 2024's money. Yeah, I get it now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
James?
Yeah, just quick. When you were mentioning, you said obviously you do benchmarking and that sort of thing. And in the pack, there's the table on the council tax write-offs, and I can see, obviously, I can understand the sort of collection rates and sort of we can compare that against others. But other than that, what should I be taking from that? I'm not sure if we do benchmarking, what that's telling us or what we think we should take from it.
We're just trying to give you a snapshot there of how our write-offs compare to other local authorities, and it's subjective, of course, to all the different bits and pieces within local authorities, but it was just to show really that we're not, that collection-wise we are in a good middle ground position, and that we're not excessively writing things off in council tax world either. So that was the purpose of that table.
That's fine. It's just because I think we discussed it before, but when you look at it, obviously maybe some councils are choosing just not to write off debt. So, for example, it doesn't look like Middlesbrough are choosing to write off much debt, which would suggest to me they're taking an approach which they think they can collect it. I don't know. But what I'm getting at is you can benchmark it. I think our approach seems to be, let's put something in a table, and if we're in the middle, that's probably all right. But I'm just trying to understand if there's any more sort of detailed thoughts on it other than that.
Thanks. I think the key takeaway from the table for me is that 94.1%, because that's the in-year collection rate, which shows us, as you say, middle, relatively okay. And you're absolutely right about the all years write-offs. We might find next year Middlesbrough write a huge amount off, because obviously their collection figure is a bit lower than ours. I think we try to be consistent and regular with our write-off. So if we have a look at last year's report, I think we pretty much wrote off in total across all the council tax business rates, benefits, HR rates, that's a very similar amount. So we try to be consistent. We can't really determine what other authorities do. But I think when you also talked about benchmarking, if you know, the other side of that, as I alluded to earlier, is we want to have a look at our, if we call it cost of collection, what it actually costs us to collect that 280 odd million, and to see where we are. So hopefully we'd be at the top end of that table, i.e. being the cheapest. And if we're not, we'll have a look at why not.
Yeah, apologies for being late. Don't think they want us to get into Huddersfield at the minute. But anyway, so a couple of things. One is, it's always very difficult to collect anywhere near 100% of debt. And I always think that's worth saying, simply because sometimes there's not a great understanding that's the case for all organisations, actually, not just this one. The second one is the comparative table about write-offs compared with other councils, and some are doing better than us, even in quite difficult financial circumstances for a lot of people. So I'm just wondering what it is they're doing that we're not. Some I accept are doing not as well, so, you know, but some are doing better, so it'd be worth just wondering what it is they're doing that we're not. And then the second question is about the areas of the highest areas of debt and non-domestic rate collections is one of the biggest proportions of the debt. And do we have an explanation for that? Is it businesses closing, therefore there being a debt at their closure and that's not recoverable, that sort of thing? That would just be worth knowing, I think.
So I'll respond to the first bit if that's okay. We do regularly meet with our regional colleagues to benchmark against all areas, whether it be from different methods of recovery right through to how many people you have doing phone lines and things like that to try and compare. There isn't a magic formula out there that somebody is doing something incredibly different to us. We all are doing very, very similar activities. When we see regional kind of local quite significant differences, so for example Barnsley and Rotherham are collecting quite highly in year, it's where there's quite significant different council tax reduction schemes largely. So there's less pressure to recover off the most economically vulnerable. So that's the kind of one of the big differences that we see. Is that okay?
Can I just come in on your point on business rates or an NDR in the table? Yeah, we did have to use a fair amount of the provision we had for bad debt on business rates, and that can be for a number of things. It can be because businesses do close, but equally it goes back to the point made by one of your colleagues earlier around appeals. And appeals can get backdated 4 or 5, 6 years, sometimes it depends when the last rating list was, and you have to just write back that appeal in a lump sum, so that can make a significant... not off the top of my head, but we can have a look at it for you. Yeah.
Well, no, okay.
Yeah.
Because that is a feature of
Yeah, if the intention, I think, from government is to have a business rates evaluation every 3 years, I think, going forward. Yeah. So that big 6-year, perhaps backdated thing that may have happened in the past shouldn't be as big. And if you've got more up-to-date valuations, you shouldn't have that.
There's one thing after another this morning. I'm involved in a charity that helps people pay some debt. And what is fascinating is people with multiple debts, they are advised that they must pay Sky or any of those, Netflix, any of those first, then gas and electricity especially, because they can be turned off, and council taxes at the, you can get away with the not paying council tax is the advice they're given, not by the charity, but by debt advisors. And I just wonder if that is known and whether there's any way you can turn that around. Because, in many ways it's right. What can you do, really, except court action?
That's certainly not the kind of advice that we would give out to residents. And
No, I ought to explain, not council advice,
Yeah.
but advice, independent
Right,
debt advisors.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess the only way I can counter that is by saying that we do have really robust processes in place. So we do regularly, obviously, have large court hearings, and we'll take people to liability order, and then pass that into whether it be bailiff action or charging orders where there's property involved. So we are as robust as we can be, but as a local authority, the ultimate kind of point we would take residents to would be imprisonment, which is not something we do in this local authority. So yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. One of the ways of avoiding bad debt write-off is not allowing the debt to be created in the first place. What are we doing to enable people to pay for services in advance? I've had experience myself personally where I can't pay for something until an invoice is generated. I can't pay for something, sort of online or, using my card. I've got to send a cheque. Our processes, whilst we may be following our processes are quite out of date. So where does it sit on the transformation programme to make sure that for all of these services, if you want to order an extra bin, you should be able to pay for it before you order it. If you want to hire a room that Kirklees owns, you should be able to pay for it before you access it. You can't do that at the moment in a lot of cases. So as a consequence, a debt is created, and then there's a chase if they don't pay it. If you've got to wait for an invoice, and I mean, I've raised in the past cases where I've been waiting several years for an invoice to be raised. We've got historic processes that create debt, and as soon as you create debt, you increase the risk of that debt not being paid. So my first question is around that, because this ought to be high up on this is how we can reduce the debts that we write off by not creating them in the first place. I don't think that features at the moment. And then secondly, I'll come back to the point that was raised slightly earlier around resourcing. Kevin will know this very well at the moment because it all sits on his shoulders, that we are at that stage where we are starting to think about what our budget might look like for next year. So I'm hoping we're having that conversation about resourcing early enough so that if there is a need to increase the resources to enable us to maximise that collection of debt and reduce bad debt write-off, we're having that conversation early enough so that can factor into the planning for next year's budget. Because unless we do that early enough, we're going to find that we suddenly realise we need more resources, but we haven't got the money to pay for it. So if we just address those two questions for me. I don't know who wants to pick those up. I'm looking at both of you, to be fair.
Thank you. I'll take your second one first. Yes, we're absolutely having those conversations about resourcing, particularly in those areas of significant income collection, areas of teams of council tax and business rates. Yeah, and I mentioned we will be looking at what other authorities do and see how efficient we are. So that's absolutely what we're looking at. And then your first point on antiquated procedures and etc. So we do have a debt recovery transformation project underway. There's two separate parts to that. The part one we've completed is around getting some detailed data around all our debt, who our debtors are, which service there are, at what stage in the debt chase-up they are. So we'd consider somebody 0 to 30 days, we wouldn't consider that to be outstanding debt, but then we've got 30 to 60, 60 to 90 for every service, you can imagine. So we've completed that part of the work, and that's gone well, and services are looking at that each month. The second part is the one where we've now moving on to what you alluded to, Councillor Taylor, around trying to change our processes for payment at point of order, if you like. And we're trying to identify those services that can readily do that with our existing systems. And that's as far as we've got. We haven't identified any services yet particularly.
You know what I'm going to ask. I'd like, and this for you, Nicola, I'd like to have you or somebody come back to us to talk us through that, what that plan is, because it doesn't feel to me, because I've been aware of this for a couple of years, it doesn't feel to me it's made any progress. We need to apply a little bit of pressure to say that, you know, we're coming here and writing off debts. We're writing off those debts because we created them in the first place. And I hear what you say about the first part of the transformation programme. For me, that would have been the second part. The first part would be, let's stop creating the debts in the first place. And we can stop creating the debts by creating methods in which we can collect the money up front. So it doesn't feel to me like that's got the emphasis and the drive that I would like to see for that programme. So I'll ask Nicola to liaise with whoever the appropriate person is to establish when you can come back and present to us of what that aspect of transformation looks like, so we can help you get the right priority in the council's transformation plans and programmes, so that we can avoid creating debts that then we may potentially have to write off. So it might sound like we're giving you work to do, but actually, hopefully it will help you get ahead and get things done more quickly. But it's important that we do that piece of work. Okay? Committee happy with that? I think we're due to note this report unless anybody's got any other questions. Okay, so we're happy to note this? Happy-ish? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah and Kevin. I think, Laura, you're up now. You can just introduce yourself, remember.
Thank you, Chair. Laura Burrell, Electoral Services Manager at Kirklees Council. So the report that we've presented is following the interim polling district and places review. So as you'll be aware, the Local Government Boundary Commission for England recently concluded a review of the Kirklees ward boundaries. 15 external ward boundaries were amended. The full polling district review has taken place to create a polling scheme that fits the new ward boundary arrangements, ready for the delivery of the election in May 2026. The review was conducted in line with the statutory rules. This included a public consultation that took place and commenced in March of this year. All elected members were directly consulted as well, and the consultation documents were shared with local organisations, polling stations, booking agents, head teachers and elected MPs and the Mayor of West Yorkshire. The polling scheme that is proposed addresses circumstances where polling districts have been moved between wards and the current arrangements that we have are no longer viable for the election. The Boundary Commission, as part of their review, have created anomalies across 6 wards. So this is where the new external ward boundaries are not coterminous with the parliamentary boundaries. So there are some areas where we've had to create mini polling districts to be able to deliver the election if it was combined with the parliamentary election. The Electoral Commission determines that each polling station should host no more than 2,250 electors. That's in-person electors. So that's what we've tried to work to when allocating properties to stations. We wanted to achieve a more equitable balance in the number of polling districts across the wards to ensure that there was a more equal access to polling stations across the ward areas. We have made an attempt to reduce the number of schools in use. So the returning officer has statutory powers to use school buildings as polling stations. However, as we have seen that there's more elections taking place, particularly general elections at short notice, the use of schools can disrupt learning for pupils and requires residents to take time off work for their children to be off. So we have managed to, you'll see in the report that we have reduced down from 23 schools down to 10. Of those 10, only 3 choose to close, and we are continuing to work with them to find arrangements on how we could keep the school open going forward. The report recommends relabeling the polling districts. So the polling district codes that you'll see if you've seen the electoral register will change to reflect the new ward names, and we have added on the parliamentary constituency letter just so that it's clear to voters, elected members and candidates and agents which areas are in which polling districts. Should the committee agree the polling district changes, the electoral register will be amended over this autumn. We'll move all the properties into the correct wards, and we will publish a revised electoral register on the 1st of December, ready for the elections in May. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. I'll open that to members to ask questions. Andy?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and obviously there's a lot of work that's gone into this. Obviously really important for the community that we get it right. And, you know, when you make any change like this, there's obviously going to be some people who think they're going to be disadvantaged by the changes. And you said that you'd followed the rules in line with statutory requirements. Are there any rules that you feel we've not been able to meet? Because I'm really keen, really, that the council can demonstrate that we're in a defensible position when we inevitably get those challenges back.
Yes, so we directly contacted a list of local groups and charities that, you know, regularly get in touch with us, but also we sought contacts from our communications team of who we would consult with. We did as well meet directly with the elected members on multiple occasions to talk through the issues and the different options available, and that was really helpful. So, you know, elected members in particular have unique knowledge in their wards, so I really appreciate the help and support with that. We did also, we will write directly to the people who are affected by the changes early, so we will write to them in November advising them of the changes. We've complied with the rules in terms of public consultation, and I would say that we've gone above and beyond in terms to reach out. The responses are included, all responses that we received in Appendix 2, and you can see that we did receive from residents, head teachers. We would like that to be higher, but of course we can only do what we can do, unfortunately. But I'm confident that we've complied, and I think a lot of the feedback might be at the election when people realise they might have changed ward. But unfortunately, the ward boundary arrangements was conducted by the Commission and not Kirklees Council, and they conducted a full public consultation review over a period of 2 years.
I did have one specific area of concern, which was obviously we're opening up new polling stations. So, you know, are they properly checked out to make sure they're suitable for accessibility, the disabled access and things like that, just to make sure that, you know, we're not disadvantaging, you know, key parts of the community like that?
Yes, so before we use any new polling station, we conduct a site visit ourselves to ensure that it complies with disability access regulations. So we'll make sure that all of our polling stations have suitable access for those that may be in a wheelchair, as an example. But yeah, they're all compliant with the rules, and we'll ensure that they will be ahead of the election.
Thank you. Yeah.
James, do you want to come in?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for the work. I've obviously had comments in my ward, and just to understand one ward and try to understand what streets are where and what is really complicated. So to do that across Kirklees and the amount of detail you have to look into it is pretty unbelievable. The only thing I just wanted to just as a comment really was just to say, obviously, agree with the principle of not using schools where we can't, because I think it's important that, you know, we can use it for, we don't disrupt education. I understand the point about we can't use temporary ones, or we don't want to use temporary ones because of things like access and space and stuff like that. And I also understand the point around having more double polling stations and why you're taking that approach. My only concern is that I've seen it in my own area that because the council's, you know, consolidating, selling some of its assets or closing some of its assets, that's feeding into having less polling stations that we're in control of as a council, and using council buildings, which to me must create some risk. And if some of those buildings in the future that we choose to dispose of are, for example, double polling stations, then you've got a double issue. So I don't know if it's something that you can really answer now, but I'm just thinking as an overall risk as a council to our sort of electoral process, just thinking how we consider that. And for example, when we do dispose of assets, is that something that we think about, and where there might be polling stations? Because I think for now we're okay, but I can see in the future where we could have problems if we're not careful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's becoming a problem in terms of if there's less public buildings that are available, then we have to go back to the drawing board and look for suitable alternatives. What we have done is we work with our corporate facilities management team, who give us early notice of, you know, when assets might be under review. If we are looking to you know, move a community group into the building and they're going to lease the building from us, quite often we can arrange in the agreement that they will let us use it as a polling station. That's something that we have done where buildings have moved out of our control into control of someone else. We've had that early agreement. So that does mitigate some of the risk. Obviously, the big issue is for most planned elections, we've got around 12 months to prepare, so we have plenty of time to look and review. The issue is the unplanned ones, where we are scrambling for polling stations at the last minute. But we have a good relationship with our booking agents, and again, we would always reach out to members for any knowledge of where we could move to. But yes, effectively, as community buildings are reducing, it's getting harder to facilitate polling stations, you know, within local areas.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to bring Kath in and then Graham.
Yeah, thanks very much, Laura. An unenviable task. I'm concurring with what James said about, I'm glad schools are being removed as far as it is practically possible, for all the good reasons, and about accessibility and so on. The issue that I'm interested in is that you've used the figures for those in a polling district who continue to potentially vote in person rather than by post. But yet we know that there's a requirement, I don't know if it started, is it this year, for people to reapply for their postal vote if they currently have one. And, you know, knowing human nature, people will assume that they've got one until it comes to where is my my ballot paper through the post, and so on. So what calculations have you made for any adjustment of those figures for a tightening up of voting by post, which may come in the next elections bill that's coming down the line, for which there has been sort of pre-discussion about that sort of thing?
So we're currently reviewing all of our postal voters in line with the government legislation. So we have around 70,000 that were due for renewal this year, and we've been writing to residents and encouraging them to reapply as soon as possible. As you can imagine, processing 70,000 applications is a huge task. Naturally, we don't know how many we will take off at this stage. They've still got time to apply up until the 31st of January to reapply for your postal vote ahead of the election. But yes, there is the risk that the numbers at the polling station may increase at the next election. The problem around this was timing. Given that the government had given us until the 31st of January, we won't know those final polling station numbers until the February. And then obviously we're running poll card data, postal vote data, so we wouldn't physically have had time to change. But what we have done is we've used the figures that the Local Government Boundary Commission used in their elector forecast. So it forecasts an increase anyway over the next 5 to 7 years. So we have got a little bit of a buffer. Once we've built the electoral register, we'll be able to determine if we need to have double stations, you know, so if it's gone over that threshold. But really, until we start building the register, it's hard to see, because we've used that electorate forecast, you see, with the expected increase. We do have lots of measures in place in terms of managing busy polling stations anyway. We can increase staff numbers if we need to. We can have double stations at polling station locations. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what the figures will be on the 1st of February in terms of cancellations. I'm hoping obviously low, because it's a risk that people may reapply in the short period ahead of the election, which adds risk to our team as well.
Can I have I've got a couple more if you don't mind. Well, this is of course using my own ward as an example. One of the difficulties for you actually for redrawing polling district boundaries is that you're looking at a 2D map when, as we know, a lot of places around here have hills. And so one of our arguments for one of the changes you want to make in our ward, and this may be applicable to others, I don't know, is that what we're now expecting people to walk up a very steep hill who are from an estate where the majority are, it's a council housing estate, where the majority are older people in bungalows. So either I have to go round and get them all to go on postal votes, because I can't see them getting up there physically. So that's a question, does that situation apply across other parts of Kirklees? And the second one is why did you do that question, which is renumber the polling districts. So I don't know if anybody else has noticed. So forever since the many years that I've been a councillor, I know where CL3 is. It's now CL1, and I should be totally confused. So there's been a total renumbering, which I don't think has ever happened. And so going back before 74, I think these numbers existed. And I can see why you've done it. You've taken a logical approach to something that was not logical. But however, those of us who got used to where CL5 is and CL8 and so on have now got to relearn, and there'll be confusion. And there won't be just people involved in the political process, but those who use electoral registers and so on to access stuff. So those two queries.
So in terms of the first question, in terms of the polling stations and the access, I think it is an issue across all wards where obviously people are being asked to travel to polling stations. The terrain of every ward is different in terms of rurality, the density of the electorate and what's available. I think the big thing with the numbers, especially in the Cleckheaton ward itself, is that with the increase in postal votes, postal voting has increased over the last 5 years by about 20%. So the footfall at polling stations has drastically dropped. So in terms of providing that polling station location, you're looking at potentially 200 people on a register with a 40% turnout. You might have 35 people through the door over a 16-hour day. So, we're not, where we've looked at combining polling stations and merging polling districts, it's my view that we're not asking them to travel an unreasonable distance. And I completely understand that, every estate or housing, has different demographics and different challenges. What we will do is we will write to everybody directly affected this autumn. So we'll send letters out in October and November, telling them of the change and also signposting them to postal voting if that's more, effective for them. So they will get that, and they will get the usual poll card ahead of the election, but we are starting early. So I do appreciate, what we're asking. I think we're not asking anyone to travel. I think, is this regarding the Turnsteads merge?
The distance is not great.
Yeah. Steep, yeah, that's it. And it will be closer for some people, at that top end, to go to the new arrangements, but further away for others. Yeah. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. And in terms of the second question of the renumbering, again, we will be exactly the same position, when we were putting together the report, understanding where, I was like, where's CLO3 gone, It will be a learning curve for us to get used to. It was because, in my view, it was illogical, why would you have, looking at the map, CLO1 and then CLO7 and CLO10, Yeah, so it was just about us tidying up because we would have to renumber because we've reduced, that they would all need renumbering on the register. So I do apologise, but we will get there together.
Thanks, Laura. I'll bring Graham in now, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, when we do an asset transfer, we do put a caveat in there that should we need to use that building for an asset, for a polling station, we have the right to do so.
Thanks, Graham. And Nosh, if you want to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just put on record really my thank you to Laura and the team. I think as an elected member you'll know it's been quite a task to get around 23 wards, 69 councillors. The proof in the pudding will be come May. But I just want to highlight that any sort of teething problems that do come of that are no way a reflection of the time and the effort that the team have put into it. I think they have tried their very best to make sure they've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. But the first election, which is forecasted to be in May, which will be an all-out, will be proof. And if anything does come out of that, I'm sure that the team will take it away to learn from.
Yeah, thanks, Nosh. And I echo that. And I'd also like to thank members who engaged in that process, because I think it is invaluable. I know in my ward we moved a couple of places around, and that was, you know, we went out and talked to the community, and you know, I know members across the borough have helped in that, trying to use their local knowledge to help the team. So yeah, so I just echo that. I think you.
Thanks, Chair, and can I echo what everyone else said as well about thanking officers for their work. It is a huge project to determine where everyone votes, and you know, an area of the population of over almost 500,000 is quite big. And also thank you for meeting with us as ward council as well to discuss it beforehand. One of the concerns that I've had, I know it wouldn't be in the new proposed Colne Valley West ward, but in Linley ward, the people in Outlane would then go and vote in Mount, and I think one of my concerns is there isn't really like a safe walking route between Outlane and Mount. You'd have to sort of walk across one of the roundabouts that feeds into the M62. There are other footpaths that kind of run from out, but you have to kind of, it's quite a long route, and I'm not sure exactly how kind of accessible they are. So I don't know if there is, in that case, like a special circumstances to keep a polling station at Outlane. And then secondly, it was just a bit of information as well. You mentioned that where polling stations have changed, people are going to be sent a letter about requesting potentially applying for a postal vote. That applies as well in places where the polling district boundaries haven't changed. Is that correct?
So regarding the changes in the Linley ward, so this is where the area of Newhay Road has joined Linley, and they'll be voting at Mount. Unfortunately, we did look at this option because when you look at the Linley map, it's quite a strange design for a ward boundary. We did look at the option of the polling station remaining at Outlane, but unfortunately the numbers in terms of the numbers of residents and registered voters within that area is so low that it would be difficult to justify having a polling station there, as it would be similar to what I said to Councillor Pinnock, that the numbers would be around 200 registered voters. Again, over 16-hour day, it can cost up to £2,000 to open a polling station. So if you've then only got 35 people through the door over a 16-hour day, we've moved it to Mount. But what I would add is that it's always under review. So this is we'll review this continuously over the years after the election, and probably in the years to come. As you've seen in the news, the government are looking at introducing votes for 16. Again, similar with the postal vote. If the postal voting numbers drop, the numbers at polling stations will increase. If we add, we believe, around 12 to 14,000 16-year-olds to our registers, we will need to review polling stations. So it's definitely one that we'll be keen to get feedback from members and any candidates in that area after the May election. Regarding your second question, sorry, Councillor McCarthy, can you just repeat that?
Sorry, just for example, in my ward, what was CV06, what will be CW3C? Yes, it's quite confusing, isn't it? The polling district boundaries haven't changed, but the polling station will change. Does that also mean that they will be sent a letter regarding signing up for a postal vote?
Yes, so we will be writing to anyone whose polling station has changed ahead of the election. We've arranged with our deliveries team for equipment to put signage up at the polling stations that were previously in use, just in case anyone goes to that station on autopilot or hasn't realised, they'll be signposted to the new location.
Does anyone have any other questions or points to raise?
Sorry, following on from Harry's question, Do we have emergency polling stations where buildings are, for whatever reasons, at the last minute or know that they're going to be out of use? Because there will be some from the great list that you've got here.
Yes, so for every election we have an emergency polling station provision. So we've had it, unfortunately, we've had an instance where we lost access to a polling station due to a car traffic accident. Thankfully no one was hurt. But yes, we're able to drag and drop it, essentially, if we need to. But we try and stay away from temporary polling station units as a permanent solution, as of the access issues. They're not very well suited for voter ID in terms of people want private space to have their ID checked. So we have tried to move away from them as well. But we do have a provision if we need it.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, members, if we've finished with our comments, there's 2 points we need to note. So we need to note the polling station schemes as detailed in Appendix 2 and the changes to districts in Appendix 3. But we also need to agree that the amended polling district boundaries as detailed in Appendix 1 of the report. So we're happy to agree that report. So agree those postal district boundary changes and to note the scheme of polling districts and polling stations. Yeah, I'm seeing nodding heads. So. Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Thank you, members, and thank you, Laura and Sharon, for your work. You may escape if you wish. I'm now going to apologise to Erin because I skipped an agenda item. So if you can just introduce yourself before you introduce your report, please, Erin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Erin Wood. I'm the Information Governance Manager and Data Protection Officer for Kirklees. And I'm just here to present the Information Governance Annual Compliance Report for 24-25. Hopefully you've all had a chance to see the report, but I'll go through the highlights. So first up, we looked at freedom of information and environmental information regulation requests. We do map those together. There are only slight nuances, as in environmental information is what it says on the tin, slightly different. Exemptions can be applied there, but for all intents and purposes, it allows anyone to ask us any questions around how we any documentation we have or how we operate. So 2024-25 saw 1,631 requests being submitted, which was slightly less than last year, or the previous year, I should say, and holding a compliance rate of 72%, which was on par with the previous year as well. What we did for the first time in 24-25 is actually capture the number of individual questions asked, not just the number of requests that were received by the council, because we thought that gave a clearer picture on the amount of work and effort that goes into responding to FOI requests. So the total number of questions there was 7,556 individual questions we received over that year. Unfortunately, like I say, we've not captured that before, so we don't have any benchmarking, but we're continuing to capture that this year, so next year we'll see what the difference is. And frequent trends in FOIs, we see general ones like potholes and planning applications, and then we see, depending on the topic of conversation, so in 24-25 we saw a number around Cleckheaton and Town Hall, which brought a number of I'm going to call them additional FOIs, but there's always, a flavour of the month, shall we say. And then if an individual is unhappy with how we've responded, usually that's where an exemption's been applied, they can submit a request for internal review. We conducted 48 reviews in 24-25, and again, we have 20 working days to respond to them and had a response rate of 73% within that time. Moving on to subject access requests then, or SARs as we call them in the IG team. We received 541 subject access requests in 24-25, which was a 26% increase on the previous year. This is the third consecutive year that we have seen a roughly 25% increase. And we expect that trend will continue as more and more people become aware of their rights Compliance rates remained stable at 64%, which I think is good considering the increase in demand, but we're not still hitting our statutory requirements there, and there's still work to be done, and we are aware of that. We're still also managing our backlog of SARS that we've been working on for some time now, and we'll continue to work with the Information Commissioner, which is our regulator, to manage that backlog. We did see in 24-25 that backlog start to decline, and the IG team and other services across the council do a great job in trying to get some of those requests off the backlog. But as I've mentioned in previous years, as soon as we get one off, we seem to receive two more, which doesn't help us sort of get anywhere. We're a bit on a hamster wheel. We did in 24-25 look at doing the pincer movement, so not just working from the top and the oldest first, but starting to try and work from the bottom and the newer ones, and preventing requests going onto the backlog in the first place to try and close that gap. And we have done that, but like I say, it just, with the vast increase in requests, it doesn't seem to have made much change to the numbers overall. We also look after, shall we say, the remainder of the data subjects' rights requests. Usually that comes to erasure or rectification when it comes to information held by the council. We did see a drop in 24-25 to 56 requests, and we held a compliance rate of 79% there, which was slightly down by a very little bit on the previous year. And outside of those data subjects' rights, we also prepare documents for disclosure. So these are requests generally made by the police for information when they're working on active cases. There's no statutory timescale for us responding to such requests, but what we do is hold ourselves to account by using the statutory timescales for SARS and anything else that we put out there. To manage our compliance rate. So we received 466 requests from the police in 24-25 and had a compliance rate there of 80%, which is, I should say, is an increase on the previous year as well. In terms of information security incidents, we received 314 across that year, which again is on average what we'd expect to receive. We tend to receive between 315, 330 every year. We're not necessarily too concerned about that number. It does seem quite high for the number of security incidents, but we'll say most of those are what we consider low-level incidents, stuff that we've managed to contain quite quickly and quite rapidly with no outward concern for the public or staff. However, we did report 6 separate incidents to the Information Commissioner last year, but the Information Commissioner took no further action on any of those 6 and deemed that we'd handled all of those incidents appropriately and put learning in place as a result of that to mitigate them happening in future. Most incidents that we see reported are due to human error, usually related again to emails or posts being directed to the wrong individual or the wrong attachment being attached to an email, for example, or sometimes in the postal room items can get batched and you receive your own letter and the person's behind. Again, we do try and contain those as best as possible. Email recall, working with the service that may have had that incident occur, and working with the public as well to make sure that we can recover that information and they take no further action. And I will say that most of the public are very receptive to that and are willing to help us. We also review data protection impact assessments. We launched in 24-25 around Q3, I think it was, our new data protection impact assessment process. I think I spoke last year around, we used to do it on a Granica system, and we've moved it to a SharePoint service now, which makes it much easier for services to complete those assessments, and it's more collaborative for working across both IG teams and anyone else that needs to be involved. Sometimes we have to call in IT colleagues for assurance around cybersecurity and things like that. We've seen 77 of those, I should say, across the whole year, not just the new ones received in 24-25, which again is around average. We see between 70 and 80 most years. That could either be new systems or developments, new data collections, or it may be amendments to existing processes that are in place, maybe a change of system or a new element of data collection or something like that, and we'll revise and review and update. So our successes, I suppose, over the year are, again, launching that new DPIA process. Services much more engaged with us as a result of that. We've managed to maintain compliance across the board, and we've managed to update all our policies. Again, challenges are always going to stick around, statutory timescales and the SARS backlog, unfortunately, until we've removed that, and the significant increase in demand year on year. So we'll continue to work through our SARS backlog. We'll continue to work on developing new processes, procedures, and looking at options available to us to manage that increase in workload that we can foresee coming as well. We're also looking at our processes on FOI management. Again, following, I think it was Councillor Pinnock's comments last year around making more information more accessible to people openly, rather than having to submit FOIs. And we're just continuing to monitor revisions to data protection legislation as well, with the Data Use and Access Act coming in this year.
Thanks, Aaron. Quite a comprehensive report there. I'm going to open it to members for...
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report. And it's obviously a really important part of what the council does, just to maintain public trust, isn't it? You mentioned the DSPT report in there, something that I've come across before, Data Security and Protection Toolkit. It's a good barometer, isn't it, for an organisation to see how it's matching up against controls, expected controls. So I just wondered, first question is, can you just give us a bit of an outline as to how the council's doing against those standards? And the second one was on the data privacy impact assessment process, and whether that's actually a mandatory process that all changes need to follow, or how you decide which changes require that level of assessment.
Yes, thank you. So the Data Security and Protection Toolkit, or DSPT for short, that's our assessment ultimately against NHS standards, so that colleagues in adult social care, public health can access NHS databases and information. We met compliance. That's the level we've received on that. And again, they've just launched a toolkit for this year, so we'll be starting work on that again. It's an annual submission that we do, and it looks at information security right across the organisation. And we work quite closely with IT to make sure that all our standards are met, and it links in with their cybersecurity assessments as well. I won't go into that, that's not my area. And then in terms of the data protection impact assessments, legislatively it's mandated that all high-risk processing has a DPIA undertaken. What we tend to work with is any moderate risk when it comes to data. We do request that they are undertaken. We do ask everyone to do that. Like I say, with the launch of the new forms, without going into too much operational talk around it, what we've done is we've split it into two. So we've got a shorter form for less risky processing activities, so we can still do a quick check on, the security that we're doing there, and I don't want to say tick box exercise, because it's not. It's a lengthy document, and I'm sure services would disagree with tick box exercise. But we do have that, and then we have a more comprehensive form for anything that we consider high risk or higher risk processing. So that includes anything with what we call special category data, so like health information, racial information, things like that. Anything where we're processing, I don't know, criminal data or financial data, or there's quite large sums of information being used or coming in. So we've done that two-tier process now to try and cover more across the board.
Yeah, particularly interested in changes, so new systems coming in, new processes, because obviously those are high risk. So what I've seen elsewhere is that the data privacy impact assessment's used as sort of almost a gateway so that that service can go live once the data privacy impact assessment's been done and we can prove that we've got the right level of control in place?
Yes, so we do, like I say, capture that through the DPIA process. We're very rarely, what I'd say, a blocker. What we do is we provide the advice and guidance to make sure that any systems that are being brought in are as secure and robust as they can be, and help them get there.
Okay, thank you.
James?
Yeah, just two things. So on the SARS, I'm just interested about, so looking at the figures of the number of complex cases, because you've got 19, and to me that kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking that's low, because I'm thinking about we deal with lots of children's data, lots of things like health, disability, which need a lot of thought about in terms of redactions and a lot of risk. So I'm not suggesting that we sort of rig the figures or anything, but I did wonder whether 19 is whether actually there's a lot more complex cases there, which is making our figures look maybe a bit, in terms of completion, a bit lower than what they might be. I don't know if that's true or I'm just kind of inventing that.
So with the complex cases, that's 19 that we deemed complex within the year that came in, but obviously we've still got the backlog as well. So we're dealing with that. And those complex cases, like you alluded to there, are generally, but not in all instances, children's social care files where, care leavers have requested their information. And they can be 10, 15, 20,000 pages. We've got one ongoing that's over 30,000 pages worth of information that needs to be recovered, gone through, organised, sorted, redacted. And we're working with that applicant and sending information in batches so that they're still receiving things, but that's been on our backlog for some time now. So when we say there might be only 19 complex cases, it's a great deal of work that goes into that.
No, I mean, that's fine. I just thought, you might be being a bit hard on yourself in terms of what you're saying and not complex. Actually, maybe they are. But anyway, I think you've taken a sensible approach. The other thing I just wanted to check on was the incidents that you've reported that have been reportable, so where there's potentially been harm to people. So obviously some of those are to do with infosecurity, and we've had discussions about that there, so I won't go on that. But just in terms of like the cases around domestic abuse, because I work in data privacy as well, and I know this is an issue broadly for lots of organisations because of the amount of data that they have, and a lot of time data is shared between people and partners and things like that. But it's just kind of very much in my mind that in terms of what can actually harm can be caused to people, this is obviously potentially in the sort of catastrophic life or death type situation. And I'm just wondering in terms of the risk that we have there and how we're dealing with it, how we're approaching that, because I know you've mentioned about training and stuff, which is good, but are there any additional controls or risks we should be thinking about across the council? Because obviously if we do disclose things like addresses to people that have fled domestic abuse, that is potentially very serious, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, we did have conversations with council tax at the time, because like I say, there were two instances there. What I will say with one of those instances, we do have I don't want to say like a register where we're aware of domestic violence cases where, and one of those people had sort of just started that process of being added to that list and hadn't been aware at the time that had gone out. So we do have measures in place to try and prevent this happening as far as possible. The other one we got very, very lucky on, and it was a bounce back because someone had inserted the email address incorrectly. But there is a lot of learning that we did take from that to work with services around data quality as well as just protecting the data. If we'd have had that email address written down correctly, then yes, that would have been a catastrophic incident. So, like I say, we worked with the service at the time, but again, there is always going to be an element of human error when it comes to manually inputting information. We can do so much, but we're relied on not knowing.
That makes sense, and I think it's good to know that we've got a process for people who tell us that they're in that scenario. I think that's good. The only thing I was thinking more of is that you talking about the council tax process, which is obviously where that's materialised, and then I just think in my head, okay, so if that happens in the council tax, could that happen in other services? And do you see what I mean? And how we can put in preventative measures, because I guess council tax isn't the only place where they might contact somebody by email or letter or whatever. So I mean, I know there's sometimes when it's manual error, there's only so much you can do, but it's just making sure we think about that, because I think of all of the risks, it is one that's impacts less people but could have a significant effect.
Yeah, I'll take that away. Thank you. And like I say, we're developing further. I'm calling them like subject-specific training modules and more guidance for staff. So that's something that we can look at specifically looking into.
Thanks. I'll bring Kath in now.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the report. Couple of questions and maybe a couple of comments. So firstly, do we have any comparative data?
I've come slightly early this year. I normally come sort of November, December time. So we do have benchmarking data with our neighbouring West Yorkshire authorities, but we don't have that through at the moment. But if history is anything to go by, it's very much match for match. Leeds usually get more. They're a bigger area. But we do see the same incline and decline sort of trends in terms of numbers received, especially around FOIs and SARS.
Right, no, yes, I thought I remembered seeing benchmarking, but if at some point we can just have it, I think that would be helpful if we're to keep an eye on what's going on. The second one is the question about FOIs and the equivalent for environmental regulations. I think there may be a lesson to be learned from the list of the trends of issues that you've got. That if people are having to put in an FOI about a pothole, for goodness sake, then why isn't that information about road repairs and state of roads freely and easily available on our website, for example? Because you wouldn't. If it were, you would hope more people would look first before putting in an FOI, which isn't the easiest process to use. Ditto business rates. I mean, why an FOI? You know what I mean? So is anybody looking at those? I mean, Cleckheaton Town Hall, I can understand because of the way, the information that wasn't available. But the others, you think, there's some lessons here to be learned about where the information is on our website. And I have to say, some services easily available, some it's a nightmare in access, finding what you want. And so people then resort to these, which is not the best route for them, actually, because in the end, they've got to ask the right question to get the answer they want. So that's the first one. The second is FOIs, increasingly journalists use FOIs to make stories. So do we know what proportion are from people external to Kirklees, or so we just get a feel of why, and where does the discussion take place about, we've got a lot of FOIs, a lot of them on issues that should be readily, the info should be readily available to folk. What are we doing about it? That's what strikes me about this.
Yeah, so in terms of journalism inquiries, I don't have those figures to hand, but it's something we can pull out. But there's always that caveat there of if they've made it from a BBC email address or a like Yorkshire Live type email address, we'll record it as potentially that. If they make it from their Gmail account, we wouldn't know. So those figures are not generally that accurate, which is why we don't present them. In terms of wider publication and transparency of information, I think we had this discussion last year, and I mean, but I will say that obviously this year we've got some more contentious issues, again in the Kirklees ward, which we've developed and worked with the service around microsites available for those, the Oakenshaw bus lane, for example, to try and proactively put information in a readily available place, in an accessible place, to try and circumnavigate some of the FOIs. So we're doing that, but wider. I think last year I passed over to Rachel, so I might do the same again.
Am I able to speak? Hi, my name's Samantha Lawton and I'm Service Director for Legal Governance and Commissioning, and that includes information governance. I was just going to come in to say I chair the Information Governance Board, or CIRO, for Kirklees Council. And I take your point, Councillor Pinnock, it is something, when we get any learning from the ICO, we always share it across all the organisations, so it doesn't just stay in council tax. I wanted to raise that point. In relation to if we are seeing particular themes coming out of FOIs, we do review them at the board and we do go away and speak to the service about trying to work with them to get anything that we think could be publicly available on the site to negate that. So what we could do is, and that's an ongoing conversation, because sometimes it might be a resource issue, sometimes it might be a capacity issue, sometimes it might be a technical issue as to why they can't. So there's a number of reasons. What we could do today is to take away those particular areas and make sure we include them when we bring back the update, to have a look at what those reasons are as to why, because we do work with services and try and ask them to put it on publicly, because we don't need the FOIs then, do we, if we can? Sometimes there's good reasons why they can't, and so we can have a look at that and take that away. But I did want to just express it is something that we do look at, and if there are themes coming out, we do work with services to get the information on the website as much as we can. The two that you've raised, we can have a look and speak to the services.
Thanks very much, Sam. So, when you said capacity and resources, I reflected on the quite a long number of requests I've put into council inquiries that they just seem to go into a black hole. And some of them are quite important. So, you know, and I know we've been asked as councillors not to do FOIs, and I understand that because it's hugely resource intensive and doesn't necessarily get the answers I'm looking for. How on earth can increasingly people expect to have information? You know, we're not in the world even 10 years ago. People expect to find it easily. And if they don't, they reckon you're hiding it deliberately. That's the problem. And so I haven't resorted to FOIs yet. But unless I get answers, I don't know what else I do. So therefore what I'm saying is I understand the frustration of people who are putting in FOIs. If they can't find the information, then they suspect, you know, we're in the age of conspiracy theories, and people think then it's being deliberately hidden for whatever malfarious reasons. So, do we need to put more resource into that area? Do we need to do more for the website? Because something is not going right, it seems to me.
Kath, I'm going to ask Rachel to come in. Rachel would like to just respond.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, I'm Rachel Spencer-Henschel, Deputy Chief Exec. Absolutely hear what you're saying, Kath. And we've got a programme at the moment called our Customer and Access Transformation Programme. And you might remember I came to talk to each group last year about kind of what we were getting through Kirklees Direct, what we were getting through councillor inquiries. What we've done since then, as a result of the steer I've had from you as councillors and your experiences, is try to match that against our FOIs in terms of themes, as well as what's coming through complaints. Complaints is difficult. We always have that debate, when is a complaint, which I won't want to start today because we'll probably run out of time. But we obviously can't do everything at once. So part of the work we've been doing so far this year has been on missed bins. Potholes is definitely on our list, because the way that you report it on the website is quite straightforward, but the information that the person gets back is not particularly helpful. So we've got quite a lot of quick wins, as well as things on council tax. So I actually just wrote to all group leaders last week to say I'd like to come back next month and talk to you and give you an update on what we're doing. So I will take you through some of that in that conversation, if that's okay at your group meetings. But just to reassure you, we are putting that front and centre, and also exploring opportunities, for example, using AI agents through things like Kirklees Direct and through our website, which obviously a lot of companies do now. But how do we make sure that's fit for purpose and of quality, and kind of moves us from the kind of bot interaction to something that's a little bit more interactive? The only slight challenge with any kind of digital solution is it relies on the information being available for it to draw from. So that's where we need the services to work with us to make sure we're doing it right. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just thank you very much, and I'm pleased that people are on the case. I wonder if we could have something back at some point.
I'll pick that up, Kath. I just want to bring... Harry's been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Chair. And also thanks to officers for the work they've been doing, and this report as well. I guess my question does follow a lot on what Councillor Pinnock has been saying, but looking at some of the frequent requests, I mean, speaking as a ward councillor, we generally only get casework about potholes if people have already kind of been through the mill. So they've kind of gone through the highway system, or they've emailed highways or something. And I guess the answer is, what work has been doing with the relevant services to make sure that either the service is more responsive to residents, one, or two, if it's not possible to fulfil a resident's request, that they are kind of given clear timeframes or clear information about how they can expect something to be done. And then secondly, I've got a question about, obviously, I suppose one of the issues with information governance would be there is the risk of kind of fines or kind of action taken by the ICO or other bodies if we don't meet that kind of statutory compliance. So I guess my question is about has there been any formal kind of action other than what's been mentioned in the report against the council through the ICO, and what action has been doing to kind of further than what's in the report, but to kind of address that? Thank you.
No formal action has been taken by the Information Commissioner. As it stands, we're still in an open dialogue with them around the information that's already contained within the SARS backlog. But we are aware that potentially at some point.
And I just wanted to add to that we are looking, we're not just sitting on our hands and waiting for the numbers to increase. We are looking at a technological solution, because the numbers are going up, but there's something about digitally what can we do to help redact, because as you've heard, the issue is with the complex cases that are thousands and thousands of pages. So we're looking at what digital solutions they are to help us redact those much quicker so we can get through them. Different types of AI tools out there, but absolutely. So that is something we're working on at the moment, and there was a paper to the board about that within the last couple of months, Councillor.
Thanks, Sam. Did you want to come back, Harry? Or?
Just a very quick comment about the use of AI. It's something that we've kind of looked into, kind of other things I've been involved with, and also employment and so on. And the real risk with AI is that sometimes it's very, very wrong, and it can hallucinate answers, and there's actually a risk that it will actually cause more problems if you don't get it absolutely right. So it has to be, I guess, we have to really, really know what we're doing and make sure that we're kind of doing it properly and not necessarily going for the easiest, quickest or cheapest solution.
Thanks, Harry. Just from me, we would ask that at some point you come back, and I'll leave it to Nicola to agree a timescale for that to come back and give us a bit more information on the FOI trends and what actions we are taking on that. And you've already alluded to some of that. A big thank you to Erin. I think one of the problems why you've had so many questions is because your report was so good. Because you shared a lot of information with us and it's made it easy for us to understand, which is you know, we're very grateful for, to be honest. The other one, and it is developing into a bit of a theme, and it's one for probably Sam, Rachel and Kevin jointly. I'm hearing again here there may be a resource challenge. It's that time when we're starting to put our budgets together, so to make sure that that's in the thinking, if that is part of the capacity is an issue, are we trying to address that through as we develop our budget for the following year? But I'll just leave that at that. But Erin, thank you very much for your report, and I think all of us would echo that we appreciated that, and I think we're just here to note that, so are we content to note that? Okay, thank you. You can escape if you wish as well. And I think we're now going to ask Nick to present his report. Just introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name's Nick Howe. I'm the Policy and Partnership Manager for Policy, Partnership and Corporate Planning. We had a discussion on the 1st of August, which you were all involved in, and ahead of the review starting on the 1st of October, the report contains the terms of reference, and we're asking committee here to approve the terms of reference. As you'll see in the report, the terms of reference include the background, the purpose of the review, issues to be considered, and obviously a timeline and the process for carrying out that review as well. I don't think I have anything more to add, just to take questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Short and sweet. I'll open it to...
Yeah, thanks very much, Nick. You have all the good jobs. So in the devolution changes that are going through Parliament, is part of it is a consideration of increasing the number of parish and town councils. That is not confirmed. That's just part of the discussion. So how will, if that happens, it will come in for May 27. So is that something on your radar? I guess it's, yeah.
It's on our radar in terms of, on your radar, that we have read about it and we are waiting for further guidance. In terms of how it links into this review, as you'll see from the papers and the previous report we brought, and certainly went to council, we're carrying out this review because it's 16 years since the last one, and following on from the recent local boundary commission review and the anomalies that were created there, it made sense to carry out one now and ahead of the all-out elections of parishes in 2027. We will wait and see. Like a lot of things in the devolution bill, we will wait and see what comes out. Colleagues within the council and officers are reading it all the time. We're awaiting guidance from government. We are acutely aware of some of the things that are proposed there. We've already had some consideration and discussion. We will wait until we're told, really. And we'll have to wait and see, Kath, I think. That's the easiest question. Answer.
Harry?
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, I know we're waiting for guidance from the Secretary of State, but I know there's, again, in the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, there's consideration of neighbourhood governance. I know we don't know what it would look like, but is that something that's going to factor into this review? And then the second thing, and it's not your fault, but it's something that I do moan about quite a lot, which is on the list of places where this were publicised, there's a list of various areas, but nowhere in Colne Valley is one of them. And I think, considering this is about community governance and so on, you know, the Colne Valley did have its own urban district council prior to the formation of Kirklees Council, and it does feel a little bit sometimes like we can get missed off. I know we're not currently a parished area. That might change, it might not change as a result of this, but it's just something to take in consideration that we do have quite a strong community identity, and it's some, you know, that should probably be reflected in the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of going back to the devolution bill stuff, we're just waiting for guidance and implications. It's as basic as that. We are reading and trying to already think about what the implications are, but certainly on the neighbourhood stuff, we're waiting for a lot more detail. In terms of the publication and communications, we've taken advice and guidance from comms and colleagues in consultation, and we're using the same practices we used before, and the same with the elections. I think, obviously, the way that people respond to this review in terms of online, web page, the information will be on our web page anyway, so I think people will get access to that. But I do take your point that we haven't got a specific site in there. But we can do it. And again, going back to the communications, we've had informal conversations with the parishes as well to see if there's any events, information boards within their areas that we can publicise information, and we're happy to do that in other areas as well. If you've got somewhere that you think would be worth putting a notice up there, happy to do so.
I kind of share that comment. I noted that we have a parish council in Kirkburton, but we weren't publishing the notice of the review anywhere in Kirkburton parish area, which seemed an anomaly. You know, there is a Kirkburton library, which you would logically expect something to be, you know, sort of notified in there. I mean, I'll work to make sure that it's publicised anyway, to encourage all members, whether you have a parish council or not, to, you know, sort of help publicise this, because it may be that residents in your patch decide this is something they would like if they don't have one already. And similarly, in those areas where we do have parish and town councils, we want to know what people think of them and how they perhaps would want to reshape that potentially. So I think the more publicity we can get around this, the better. I think, James, will you want to come in then?
Oh, I was just going to say, maybe I'm reading the wrong thing, but it does say Kirkburton Library in this, doesn't it? It's placed. Oh, you must have got a bit of...
Yeah, we've had the conversation, and we're acutely aware there's the odd thing missing there. We will pick that up. We will pick those up in the next few days before the consultation starts on Wednesday.
Did any members have any other questions on this at all? Sounds like you got off lightly, Nick. What we need to do is we need to agree the terms of reference and the timeline set out in the report and in Appendix A of the report. Are members content to agree this? So we can get this going from the 1st of October. Right, thank you, members. Thank you, Nick. I think we're on to the Martin show. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Greg. Sorry, I'm not doing very well today, am I at all? I'm trying to get through too quickly, aren't I?
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, members. Gareth Mills, the engagement lead from Grant Thornton, the Council's external auditors. This is our latest progress report on the 24-25 external audit programme. Just a few headline messages to flag to members on pack page, I think 140, headed up progress at early September. So just to reiterate, we received the draft accounts in advance of the statutory deadline before the end of June from Kevin and his team, and commenced a review of those accounts accordingly at the beginning of July. So myself and Greg, as the senior members of the audit team, have done a review of them. And also, because you're deemed a major audit, one of our sort of significant local authority clients, there is a cyclical technical review of your accounts called a hot review. So they've been subject to a hot review for 24-25 as well. So the consolidated findings of my review, Greg's and the hot review, I know Greg has shared with Kevin's team, and they're working through those queries as we speak. One of the key areas, I guess, just to flag for members that there's an increasing sort of review of this year is around sort of long-term debtors, particularly where monies have been loaned out by local authorities to corporate or not-for-profit bodies within a particular locality. So there's certainly a few queries that have gone out on that, and once we've worked through those, they'll probably form part of an element of the ISA 260 report summarising the key findings of our work on the accounts audit, which we're aiming to share with Kevin and colleagues by the end of this calendar year, and then present to this committee at the meeting in January. The audit work's progressing well. Greg and our team are working through that audit with a lot of engagement from Kevin's team, both remotely and indeed on site. So I know Greg and the team at least once a week are coming out to Huddersfield to progress the audit in person, which is something we did last year and was quite helpful. We're also working through the new accounting standard this year, IFRS 16, around leasing, which is something that's been long trailed within local government, which was only introduced for the first time in 24-25. So again, a new accounting issue to work through there. On the VFM side, our colleague Jeanette Beale, who led the review last year, is on with that work with her team, with obviously myself and Greg feeding into that. I know that Jeanette's held a number of meetings with various senior officers of the council. So again, the plan is to share that VFM report with management before the end of the calendar year and then present it alongside the ICE 260 report to this committee in January. Over the page on pack page 141, there's a bit of a timeline there, sort of working back from the end of February's backstop date in terms of what needs to be done before the end of February, setting out there the key sort of milestones between now and then, which obviously we've been in discussion with Kevin and colleagues, and that's currently all on track as we speak, Chair. And then the key outputs, I guess, just over the page of 142. Congratulations to anyone who spotted the deliberate typo at the end of that table. The last line should say January 2026, but essentially we're planning to report all that work to this committee in January before then signing off in February. So I'll pause at that point, Chair. I'll say headline messages is things are on track as we speak to that time frame, but happy to take any questions that you might have for Greg or myself. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Gareth. I'll open it to members if members have any questions at this point. I suppose it's that point in the cycle, really, where there's not a lot to comment on, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we're sat waiting for you to come back to us, really, aren't we?
So the key message is, you know, we're on track as we speak. I say we've got a good working relationship with Kevin's team, and you know we'll obviously provide another update at November's meeting. But yeah, it's a process of just working through the audit work as we speak. But certainly, you know, we're expecting to hit those milestones that we set out earlier in the year.
Thanks, Gareth. I think I'm not hearing anything from members. What it might be worth doing, and I've got another action for you here, is maybe if you come and join us at our pre-meeting in November, you can have an opportunity to talk to us without officers present, so you can have that frank discussion with us, and that will give us a bit of reassurance about where you are in the process and whether there's anything where we need to perhaps at that point in time get involved. I'm sure this IFS 16, which I don't fully understand, around leases, will have a few little knots in there that will need ironing out, I should imagine. But that might be beneficial for us to have that discussion in private with you without everybody else present, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. More than happy to do that. And obviously the meeting in November is right at the end of the month, so you know we'll be in that process there where we're probably starting to draft the ICE 260, the VFM report as well. So whilst they won't, possibly not at that point, have gone out in draft form to Kevin and other senior officers, we'll certainly have a good understanding and feel for what those two documents are going to contain. So I'm more than happy to have that private session before that meeting.
Well, thank you. I think that would be invaluable, and thank you for coming today as well. I'm assuming members are just happy to note the update and report. Okay, thank you. We are now on to the Martin Show. Finally, sorry Martin.
Right. Thank you, Chair, and I've sort of moved as well, just so that I can see you all a bit better than where I was sitting before. So, first report from me is the External Auditor's Recommendations Update. So, the pieces of the items that have been recommended by the External Auditor in their general and value for money reviews, and that was last year, and then secondly the ones that were recommended in previous years, and then the financial statements reviews that were also recommended, and then IT systems. And I think the Chair's pointed out in discussion with me that the not agreed ones in one sense and the noted ones have previously been advised to the committee. So therefore we really should only concentrate on those that have been agreed. So we'll amend that in future years. But of the ones that have been agreed, there are 27 of those, and it's sort of quite good. There's been progress or completed 15 of them, and the balance 12 are making progress. The report sets out the details of that, and that's really all I want to say. There's quite a lot of detail about some of them. Some of them are almost impossible to ever complete, things like send, so they're dealt with in sort of a narrative about the story so far sort of thing. I suspect they may well appear in our external auditors reports next year as well, or the end of in relation to 24-25. So yes, lots of the incomplete ones are sort of almost uncompletable. So yeah, so there we are. Any questions? Happy to do, though to some extent I'm the messenger in this rather than the person responsible. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Martin. And I guess in future, ones which have been agreed and completed will just drop off, won't they? Members?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So I was just struggling to see where there was any slippage on the ones that had been agreed. So I just wondered, perhaps going forward, if we could record, what the original date of completion might be and, how that's moved.
Yeah, that's it.
Gareth?
So I think I'd have to go back to last year's ICE 260 and VFM reports, because I think in the main we do seek to have a nominated exec lead and a date for implementation wherever possible. So I'd have to double check whether it was the case that there weren't dates alongside them. I suppose just as a wider point, Chair, obviously the ICE 260 and the VFM reports that come to this committee in January, we will give our view, I guess, on all of these as well, so that, whether we feel they've been implemented appropriately or not. And, there may be ones where we still feel that they are significant enough to still be raised as a recommendation, even though they may not have been taken forward in the prior year.
I mean, to be fair, the reason I've asked for a report like this coming forward is so we can track, see whether progress is happening. But I do think it's important that you have an independent view and you bring that independent view forward. Back to members. James?
Yeah, I guess kind of covered it. I was just, when I was looking at it, I think we've kind of discussed it, but we've got ones that are agreed and then completed, but there's no commentary against them. So I'm there thinking, well, who knows? But I also kind of conscious that some of them, like you say, do feel like they're will be recurring things. So, when we're saying strengthen the financial position to mitigate risk, blah, 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 well, I'm presuming that's going to be likely to be something we need to continue to do. So it might be more the format of agreed completed, which is a bit strange in some respects, because you can never, you can never complete that really, can you? You can complete it you think about that in your budget setting but we need to do that all the time, don't we? I would think so. It might just be the way it's reflected, but I just thought that maybe with the completed ones, if the ones that this is the first time we've seen them as completed, it might have been helpful just to have a little bit more explanation about how they were actually completed and what the final position was.
I think Gareth wants to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's a good point that, Councillor. So I think if you look particularly on page 166, those were the 3 key recommendations from the VFM report last year for 23-24. So clearly, the VFM work will focus on the Council's responses in those 3 areas particularly, and we will then have to take a view as to whether we feel that the Council's arrangements are sufficiently enhanced and improved in those areas to warrant downgrading of those in this year's report. And if that was the case, we'd then have to go through a proper due process within Grant Thornton's internal processes to say, we as an audit team no longer think this is a significant weakness and a resulting key recommendation. We think it can be downgraded, and that would have to be approved by a panel. I think looking at those three, you know, the council, I think, you know, has set out its case, I guess, on 1 and 3 as to how they believe things have been strengthened in those areas in 24-25. Again, not wishing to, you know, talk through what the report might say in January, but I think on number 2, you know, that's going to be quite tricky, and that's not a Kirklees issue. That's a national one. So you're absolutely right. You know, we will go through, you know, each of these findings from prior year, particularly the key recs that are on 166, to take a view as to whether we think they are delivered or not.
Fair, Gareth, I don't think anybody expects KR2 to disappear. I think Rachel wants to come in and comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate, because I did actually have my conversation with Jeanette yesterday on the VFM and we were discussing this report. And I think one of the challenges is as a committee, you want to know that we're actioning these recommendations, and that's what this report does. But obviously Jeanette's job is to look at what we did in 24-25. So actually the date is really key, because for those that are in progress, if the progress has been significantly in 25-26, then it's unlikely to affect the rating for 24-25. And we were having that discussion about how it's really hard to put yourself back a year when you're reporting on the progress of what we've done. So again, it's the first time, isn't it, we've brought something like this here, and we just need to recognise that there is different time horizons when we're talking about some of this activity.
I think that's a very valid point, actually, Rachel, because it messes with my mind sometimes trying to work out which year I'm talking about.
Yeah, just to sort of build on what Rachel's just said there, what we do try to do is, whilst the NAO's sort of audit guidance for VFM work is very clear that its arrangements up to the 31st of March of that particular financial year, if the council has corroborated evidence of things that have happened post 31st of March that appear to be improving matters, whilst it won't affect the reporting in the 24-25 VFM position, we will include narrative where appropriate in that document that comes in January to say, well, yes, the issue was still there at March, but we're aware of X, Y and Z that's happened post-March, and we've seen evidence of this, and we'll reassess this as part of 25-26's VFM. And it may, you know, that may lead to a dropping off of some of these issues. But Rachel's absolutely right. It is, there is a bit of a guillotine at 31st of March based on how the audit code is written. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Next report is seeking your approval, please, for the proposed audit plan for the second half of 25-26. So historically, we used to produce an audit plan for the whole year. I think it became agreed practice amongst local authority and auditors to try to have a plan that was a bit more flexible. So this is an attempt to make this plan a bit more flexible, reflecting the amount of resources available and the work we've have been able to achieve in the first half of the year, stroke distractions that we might have had in the first half of the year. We've not had an awful lot of distractions in the first half of the year, but what we have had is a continuing sort of under-resourcing as a consequence of inability to fill posts in our team. What we have done, though, is looked at the work that can be achieved, had a conversation, as is an expectation with the Council's senior management about which areas we think are the priorities, some work of which sort of disappears or becomes irrelevant because of timings of other things, and therefore we suggest, or I'm suggesting to you, a revised audit plan for the rest of the year. It does enable us to achieve almost all the original objectives with a bit of luck if we manage to finish all the work off. We have removed a few pieces of work We've moved some backwards from the early part of the year to later in the year, as shown on page 176 in the pack. We've got some proposals about which work to do and which work to remove. And we're not just removing them simply because we haven't got the resource. Sometimes it's because there is no purpose in doing that work at the moment, for example, into areas like the council's relationship with the Integrated Care Board because of changes that are taking place there. So there are some pieces that have been removed, and that's what we are recommending, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I'll open it up for comments. So, Nick, if you want to come in first, then James.
You've mentioned about the resource issue and recruitment issue or whatever. What sort of scale are we talking about? How many are in the team and how many vacancies are there?
So there are essentially 6 full. There should be just over 6 full-time equivalents working on Kirklees work, and we're more like 4.5 on at the moment, and we are looking to do some recruitment. But obviously, we've got one person who is starting relatively soon, and then we're interviewing more people next week. But of course, then the person who we recruited back in the summer, because he's on a long notice period, isn't starting till December. So depending on whether the candidate, if we find somebody next week, they may be available from quite soon or from Christmas, essentially. So that brings us up to a sort of capacity which we're now hoping will be sufficient to actually deliver the whole of the plan now stated. And again, it all depends on how much distraction we get, like other things to do that are seen as higher priorities. But hopefully that'll be where we are, yes. Thank you.
I mean, that's kind of answered where I was coming from, because when I was looking at it, what I was thinking was that quite a lot of the stuff from Q1, Q2 is, some of it's complete, but some of it's still underway, and then there's a big heavy load of things to come in the next half of this next 6 months. And so I think what you're saying is we should have some more resource which will help us to deliver that in that time scale. So that's good. I think so I'm okay with that. I think just from our perspective, I think what we just want to, or what I want to make sure we can be assured of, is that you are updating us in terms of what that position is with resource, because I think that is a big risk for us, that we just don't have the capacity, and that leaves us in a position of not having a fully functioning, internal audit function. So, but I can see how you're getting there.
Yes, I think that's right, Chair. I mean, on the plus side, our management issues were resolved by somebody choosing to come from accountancy, because staff can move at this level. So we do have the management, but he's only joined us relatively recently. So we do have the management back up to capacity. Management do some audits themselves as well. So that will help. It should mean that our ability to deliver a mixture of work is resolved. So yeah, hopefully things will be okay. But I will keep you updated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So I'd looked at it, and we're planning to reduce the original plan by about 20%. It's about right, isn't it? Yeah. So I know you said that you were going to be able to meet all your objectives. Does that mean that you're comfortable that you'll be able to sign off your annual opinion, Martin?
Yes, I think so. I think it's obviously there is an opinion, and I also qualify you to. As those members who've been on the committee for some time will be aware, but I think certainly if we get up to the capacity, we'll have been able to do enough work that I'll be very satisfied. If we don't, I'll think about it, but I think that comes down to how we deploy the staffing that we do have, to be sure that the opinion is only restricted by nature of breadth, but we deal with the most important areas essentially. Yes, it's a prioritisation issue.
So that's a risk, isn't it, at the moment? And I wondered whether you'd looked at the use of external resources to be able to supplement the internal. We've talked a lot about internal recruitment into the team, full-time equivalents, but obviously there is an option to look outside of the council as well, isn't there, for individual contractors to come in and help if we need to?
I think the answer to that, Chair, is yes. I think one of our reluctance of using contractors would be that on an individual task-by-task basis, unless those tasks are quite big and distinct, the costs of organising and the time to organise it probably exceed. the value you could get. But as a sort of long-term objective, the organisation might want to consider some kind of partnering model, but I think that's probably a thing to be a fundamental thing that needs to be sort of agreed at many levels. I tend to suggest that we would be better staying with the internal model if we think we can achieve it. I'm not convinced by the desirability of getting agency staff because the quality of them tends to be they are expensive for the level of skill you get through an agency model. I think because you would expect that, because the nature of the fact that work is sporadic means that it does tend to cost quite a lot per hour or per unit, and sometimes the quality is good, sometimes the quality is not. But don't forget that this business is extremely complicated, and I'm sure that there are people in the agency area who are skilled in working in complicated businesses, but it's not something which someone can suddenly drop into and jump to start doing certain types of audits directly.
Yeah, certainly I agree with that, and perhaps one of the things that you could look into is that sort of longer term co-sourcing arrangement, so you're not going through a sort of lot of major exercise, procurement exercise at great cost for just one small review, and that's certainly something that I've seen work well elsewhere.
Gareth?
And just a comment, if I may, Chair, this type of discussion is increasingly cropping up more and more at my other local authority clients in terms of the ability of the head of internal audit to recruit sufficient staff to deliver the audit plan in full. It's a real challenge across the sector. It's something the external audit market in public sector as well has suffered from in the past, and there's just a dearth and scarcity of public sector auditors out there, and we're all, particularly at that sort of middle grade, that the ones that, if we're being honest, Martin, the ones that actually do the work and deliver it. There's a real scarcity at that level, Chair, and we're all fishing in an increasingly smaller pool at the moment, largely linked back to, I guess, the abolition of the Audit Commission and the turning of the recruitment taff off by the Commission, and also by bodies like ours that were a bit unsure as where that was heading, and also local authorities. Sort of 10, 15 years ago, we now fast forward to where we are now, and there's just a scarcity of people at that level. So I think, I know Martin and his other colleagues within the region and ourselves, we've recruited a lot at sort of school and graduate level, but that obviously takes time to come through to that level of experience to deliver some of these complex audits. And it might be, certainly in the NHS sector that I work a lot in, the vast majority of NHS bodies have internal audits delivered by consortiums, effectively, that previously were in-house for each individual trust many years ago. They're now, so that medium to long term, as Andy said, that might be something that comes in naturally because of the lack of experienced staff that are out there. And this is not just a Kirklees challenge. I think, just to make that clear, this is an issue across the majority of my local authority clients.
Thank you. Did you want to come back to Andy? Or no?
No, I think that's right. I think it's a model that's been in use, isn't it? Across perhaps not local authorities. I'm not as familiar with local authorities as I am with other parts of the public sector, but either the fully outsourced model or the co-sourced model for internal audit, are actually quite, I would say, more prevalent than just the fully in-sourced type model. And that's because you can then bring in expertise on certain topics of interest, specialists on cyber, specialists on artificial intelligence, whatever it might be, to meet the risk profile of the organisation just gives you that flexibility. So for me, it's something that I've seen work really well in my previous sort of professional experience. So it certainly could have some benefits, I think, to the council going forward, and to supplement some of the resource challenges that you have from time to time.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to ask Rachel. So today, there's been a number of areas where we've talked about resourcing capacity issues and the impact that's having on delivery in various aspects. I wonder if we could ask our HR team to come to a meeting and just present back to us what the plans are for some of those tight spots, like audit, like information governance, like the accounts team with the debt write-offs. And I'm aware of others, and I'm sure other members are. For example, a lot of enforcement issues and planning are all areas where we're constantly told there are capacity issues. What is it that our HR team are doing to address some of those? Because I think, we can't just keep on receiving reports saying, well, we've done what we could, but there are resourcing issues, capacity issues, therefore we weren't able to do everything we would want to do. At some point, something's going to break. So I just wonder if that would be something that we could perhaps bring back to a subsequent meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think what we can do is obviously to give you as an audit committee some assurance around that. We can bring something back that identifies those areas and just talks through what that workforce planning strategy is around those particular areas. So, yeah.
I'm picking up some of these suggestions today about, co-resourcing, or even working collaboratively with our neighbours as well, potentially, with some issues. But I think it's something we should be talking about rather than just accepting that there's a problem and then we move on. And next year we get another update and there's a similar problem. So it's just perhaps pushing a little bit on that agenda. Thank you. But thank you, Martin, for that report. Are we content to note that report? No, so thank you.
You approve the audit plan
approve
as audit committee,
yeah,
please. Yes, thank you.
I'm just being told that. So yes, we need to approve this report. Are members content? Thank you. I think we're back to you again, aren't we, Martin?
Sorry, yes. This is the final report from me and the final report of the agenda, I believe, Chair. So this is the internal audit Q1 update. Appreciate we're almost at the end of Q2, but it's just the timings of the committee compared to the ability to produce the reports. So this is an activity on Q1. For the size of the team, actually, the amount of work that we're putting is, I think, reasonable. We've always had a bit of a shortfall in Q1 of the amount of work. It tends not to be particularly high in Q2 either because of the large number of staff who are seasonal only, i.e. take summer holidays, and the fact that most colleagues also take holidays during the summer. So next quarter won't be particularly high either, but that's, we've just discussed that in relation to the audit plan. So what we have here is a report on the work we have achieved in the first quarter, and also there's an update on the recommendations that were or should have been implemented by June 2025. So that's the appendix to this report, Chair. I don't think there's anything I particularly want to draw to anyone's attention as such. There are quite a number. There's a mixture as usual of adequate and of substantial, adequate and limited assurance areas, and a selection of recommendations at the various levels. Not that many fundamental recommendations this period. A few in relation to data management. A little bit more information about fraud activity in the quarterly report, and then the report on the follow-up position with regard to audit recommendations that's presented in the table on page 204. So that's all I really want to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I'll open that. Comes Andy, you were first to indicate.
It was just a question on data sharing, Martin. I just wondered whether the scope of the audit looked at whether the council's aware, actually, of where it's sharing data. So what it seemed to be talking about was where we know we're sharing data, do we have agreements in place with those that we're sharing with? But actually the fundamental point I've seen with my clients previously is them just not knowing, so embedded cookies in websites and things like that. And sharing data inadvertently, which causes a significant risk.
Who else we're sharing with? I think we sort of tried to deal with it, but it is sort of like looking for the unknown, isn't it? So it's probably worth us reflecting on that for when we do the work again to be sure that we are getting that full coverage. But it's probably something that we should also sort of discuss with Erin when she was here, really, because obviously that's a responsibility of, or it's not the it's the responsibility of our senior managers, but it's the you know, the data governance team are clearly have a role in that as well, Andy. So yes.
It's very difficult to get a grip on, but there are tools out there that allow you to, you know, see where information is being passed around. So that's perhaps something that the council could look at. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? James?
Yeah, because just on that point about the data, because I wasn't sure when I read it, because you talked about data sharing agreements. So to me, that would sit outside of suppliers in the sense that it depends on the roles of the parties, but what I'm getting at is it talks about not having to have data sharing agreements and stuff. Well, if you're contracting someone to provision you a service, you would have to have data provisions within contracts, whereas if you're sharing with other data controllers, you wouldn't necessarily. That's where you'd have data sharing agreements. So I was just a little bit unsure about what the scope of that was. Is it looking at where we share data, for example, across councils or with other agencies, or is it actually talking about suppliers who provision services to us as like processors of our data?
Yeah. It's both those two topics, the ones where we are sort of sharing it, sort of like with schools and things like that, and also the ones where we are providing them with data to assist them in providing a service to us, which obviously they're holding some of our data. So yeah.
And if I just think that's a bigger risk, because you would need to have legal agreements there, and that you wouldn't be compliant with the law, would you, if you didn't? So.
Yeah, correct. But I think it's about how deeply you go into understanding how good their own data sharing information is, and there have been some data losses, you know, as such. Yeah.
I mean, you know, so always with audits there's issues that you pick out, and the issue that seemed to come to my fore was about the waiting list for housing, where there was evidence, I think it says in your report, that there was some attempts to get on the housing, get a house allocated in order to then use right to buy to make a substantial sum of money, actually. That is a huge concern, given, you know, the very large number of genuine applicants desperate for a home. So I mean, you've got limited assurance as a conclusion. Do we know, it would be good, I think, to know from housing what actions they're taking to improve their knowledge of applicants or check their eligibility?
Well, I don't disagree with you, with Councillor Pinnock, that the responsibility for being sure that we have a good system for understanding who we are giving council housing to is important. I think some of it comes back to when we accept people as homeless, they are subject to some degree of testing to discover whether they are homeless or not. And it's the quality of that testing that sometimes is the area of problem, because once you've got through the door, there isn't necessarily just as much testing. I probably shouldn't be saying this in a public forum. No, but the testing isn't as adequate as it ought to be at that level, which sometimes then results in people moving on to the next stage without necessarily being re-verified. So I think we need to get our housing colleagues to take more steps on that, because you're right that for some people the motivation is, unfortunately, to get themselves a council house. The fact that there aren't, and indeed to try to get it under RTB, the discounts are not as big now, which doesn't make it quite as attractive as it once did. So maybe that will move away a little bit. And I suppose that at one stage it's also true that private sector rents and local authority rents were very close for similar style housing. Now local authority rents tend to be a bit lower than those in the private sector for similar quality. So again, that creates, again, this motivation to try to get council housing when perhaps you're not really as much in need as you might purport to be. So it's down to the quality assessment carried out. So it's about the it's about the number of points you get and the verification of how true that is.
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because your genuine applicants, if we're then putting them through the third degree, that feels wrong as well. But you end up questioning them to try and find the ones that are trying to do it. I'm aware of a case in my ward where absolutely that's what's happening, but we can't. You know, the house is always empty, but whenever you challenge it, there's always an excuse. There's always a reason. Yeah, it's a very difficult one. I just wanted to pick up a couple of points.
Sorry, Chair, just feedback on that one is, yes, there are certain instances where people who purported that they're homeless are then not residing in the homeless residences that are given to them, like the hotels and that. And you know, well, where are they living? And often when it is investigated, it's found that they're living back where they were living before, for example, which does suggest that they've been less than honest in getting through that stage. Now, you know, notwithstanding that, sometimes those people may have been given council housing or promoted into, so it's that type of arrangement. But Councillor Taylor's right, it is really difficult because the very nature of people is they're not wanting to tell you the truth, are they?
Just to move on to specifics, in terms of the outstanding recommendations, what I'd like to see on each of these recommendations is some sort of time scale. There's a number of them. So we've got care phones. It says a revised action plan, including completion dates, is being prepared. It doesn't say by when. So that, you know, it comments like that. And there are a number of these. The Regional Adoption Agency, one significant recommendation remains outstanding, but has been partially completed. So is it going to be completed? When's it going to be completed? Every single one of these needs to have a date attached to it, because otherwise we're not getting any assurance at all that that recommendation is going to be actioned. Can't change what's in the public domain now, but can we make sure for future reports that we have that? Because that's the whole point of this coming here, is so we can make sure that the service is picking up those recommendations and doing something about it. If all we're getting is it's ongoing or it states something but there's no date attached, that suggests there isn't sufficient attention being paid to delivering that recommendation. So if we could just ask that for the future.
That's a fair point, Chair. I could at least say that at least by telling you this, we are giving you a bit more information than we did in the past. But I think it is a fair point that we need to start tying people down to dates. And then it enables us to do, as Andy had suggested earlier, that it enables you to understand how much progress has been made or not. So yes, agree.
But also it helps you, because you can go back and say, if you don't give me dates, what Corporate Governance and Audit are going to ask is your service to come and talk to us, because that's what I'll be doing next time. If I've got any that are coming through and they haven't got dates attached, I'll be asking for them to come to the next meeting to explain themselves. So it gives you a bit more power to go back to the services with.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's fine.
Do we have any more comments or questions on this one? Are we happy to note this report? Okay, so that's the last report. All we have now to go through is the agenda plan, which should be before you. I don't know if there's anything we need to comment on or changed on this at all. Yeah, so we moved the risk assurance process back a month. So this is where we're going to look end to end at how a risk has been assessed and how they've come out with the rating for a risk, so we can assure ourselves about how the risk processes actually work in practice. So that'll be in November.
I think we mentioned last, but if we just reconfirm that one's moved from March to February.
Yeah, so I'm just being told to make sure everybody's noted that we moved forward one of our meetings from March to February. But I don't know if anybody's got any comments on any of that. I'm seeing blank faces. Yeah, don't worry. I wouldn't dare do them on other than the Friday, Kath. You'd kill me. If that's everything for everybody, can I just thank members and officers for attending and for your contributions, and see you all at the next meeting. Thank you.